You wake up. You go through the motions. You handle what needs to be handled. And yet, something feels wrong. Not dramatic, just wrong. You look in the mirror, and you still look like you. Your life may even seem mostly normal from the outside. But inside, something feels distant. And the hardest part is that you can't always explain why. You just know that the version of you that used to feel more alive doesn't feel fully here anymore. And maybe you've been trying to figure out what happened. Maybe you think stress did it, or pain, or perhaps disappointment, or maybe life just wore you down. But what if that's not the full story? What if the reason you don't feel like yourself anymore is because the version of yourself is starting to crack? In this video, we're going to talk about why this feeling shows up, what it actually means, and why it may be less of a breakdown than you think. Because when people say, "I don't feel like myself anymore," what they usually mean is this: the identity I used to live through isn't holding me together the way it used to. And that matters. Because most people spend their lives trying to get the old version back. But sometimes the old version was never your truth. It was just your coping pattern, your survival shape, your social mask, your mental construct. And when that starts falling apart, it feels unsettling. But it may also be the beginning of something far more real. A lot of people think they've lost themselves, when in reality, they've lost the role they were used to playing. And when life shifts, when pressure builds, that role stops fitting the same way. That doesn't mean you disappeared. It means the mask is getting heavier. And what makes this confusing is that roles can feel like identity after wearing them long enough. So when they begin to collapse, it feels personal. It feels like, what happened to me? But the truth is, what happened may not be loss. It may be exposure. You may be seeing, for the first time, how much of your life was built around being the one you thought you had to be. Another reason you don't feel like yourself anymore is simple. You are mentally and emotionally overloaded. When your system has been carrying too much for too long, your inner experience starts to dull. Not because your essence is gone, but because your nervous system is exhausted. You stop feeling sharp. You stop feeling inspired. You stop feeling connected to your own depth. And then the mind steps in and tells you a story. It says, you're broken. Or it says, you lost something. Or perhaps, you need to get back to who you were. But sometimes who you were was just a person running on momentum. And now the momentum is gone. So what you're feeling is not necessarily the loss of self. It may be the collapse of overstimulation. It may be the moment where all the noise is no longer strong enough to distract you from what's actually going on inside. That silence can feel empty at first. But empty is not always bad. Sometimes, empty is just what remains when the false activity stops. This is where the real tension begins. Part of you already knows something is changing, but the mind wants to reverse it. It wants the familiar version back, even if that version was anxious, disconnected, and running on autopilot. Why? Because the familiar feels safer than the unknown. So even if your old identity was built on pressure, people-pleasing, or overthinking, the mind still clings to it because it knows how to operate there. That's why this phase feels strange. You're not fully inside the old self anymore, but you're not yet stable in what's deeper. So you feel caught between two worlds. You're too aware to go back, too uncertain to fully let go, too honest to fake it like before, too unsettled to trust what's emerging. That in-between space is uncomfortable, but it's also sacred, because that is the space where illusion starts losing its grip. What you are beneath all of the roles has not gone away. The quiet center beneath all mental movement has not disappeared. The monad has not left you. What's actually happening is the false center you used to organize your life around is weakening. And when that happens, the mind panics. Because the mind only knows how to function through story, comparison, and control. It needs a character to manage. So when the character starts feeling unstable, it interprets that as danger. But the monad is not the character. It is not the story about who you are. It is the silent reality prior to all of that. The presence that remains when the performance drops. The awareness that is still here even when your confidence changes. The deeper life in you that does not depend on having a stable identity to be real. So if you don't feel like yourself anymore, maybe that's because what you used to call yourself was never your deepest center to begin with. This shows up in ordinary moments more than people realize. It looks like sitting in your car after work and feeling so drained you can't even turn the radio on. It looks like being around friends and family and feeling absent, like part of you isn't fully there. It looks like trying to fix yourself and secretly getting more exhausted every time you try. But here's the shift. Stop trying to force the old self back online. Stop measuring your aliveness by how well you perform your old identity. Stop assuming that unfamiliar means wrong. Instead, get still enough to notice what remains when you stop performing. Notice the awareness behind the confusion. Notice the quiet presence beneath the fatigue. Notice that even when your identity feels unstable, something deeper is still here, watching, breathing, existing. That's the beginning of return. Not returning to the old self, but returning to what is real before your self-image. So no, you may not feel like yourself anymore, but that doesn't automatically mean that something is wrong. It may mean that something false is falling away. It may mean that the identity that you lived through is no longer strong enough to contain what is trying to emerge. And yes, that can feel uncomfortable. It can feel empty, unfamiliar, and deeply unsettling. But sometimes the reason life feels so strange is not because you are losing yourself. It's because you are getting close to something more real than the self you were trained to be. So don't rush to rebuild the mask. Don't panic just because the old inner shape is no longer holding. Stay honest. Stay still. Stay present. Because what you truly are does not vanish when identity shakes. It just becomes easier to notice. If this journey spoke to you, Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone ready to experience life beyond thought. Comment below. Have you been feeling unlike yourself lately? And what do you think is really changing? I read every comment. If you would like to support my work directly, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/magnumopus333. Or you can explore some original merchandise at my Teespring store online. The link is in the description below. Remember, your consciousness is the key that unlocks reality. Let's keep unlocking it together. Thank you for watching. Until next time.